what we're going to do today is show off a brand new product from Toro Tamer, which is doggone innovative, pretty trick stuff. It's the industry's first 30-pound and 20-pound 16 strand hollow spliceable super braid. This is a product that's been or will be introduced at the 2013 ICAST show, which is the industry showcase. It's a once a year convention for the fishing tackle trade. And the product made it in time. Actually, we only thought we'd have a 30-pound product to play with. We're going to take that down one more step and have a 20-pound. Now, where this product comes into play is really with the guys who are trying to gain line capacity or otherwise enjoy the benefits of super braided line and apply it to some different areas. Certainly the inshore fellas on the saltwater side will find this a very attractive product because heretofore they've been using 40-pound, 50-pound, 60-pound from other manufacturers, typically 60-pound, because that's the only thing they could work with. The Toro Tamer Super Braid 16 strand is easy to splice from 40-pound on up, which is what's been on the market for the last year. And that's something that's confirmed by some other experts in the field, whether it be Gary Sato, famous for his line winder and for the Sato connection system, or Lanny Daho, the maker of the needles that we all use for the hollow braid rigging. 20 and 30 pound is real skinny stuff. Initially, we've worked on this one for a while, and what's going to happen is that the 30 pound will have a diameter of 0.26, and we'll actually test out at 35 pounds or greater. The 20 pound will test out at 25 pounds or greater, and will carry a diameter of 0.24 millimeter. The 30 pound will be 0.26, actually it's 0.256, but who's going to quibble over hundredths of millimeters? In order to work with this line, there are a couple things you're going to need. And one of them is the first thing I have out here. Have a pair of glasses, a good magnifying lens. The fly tires have a system for that that works real well. I tell you, it's it's going to be helpful if you have something that's going to allow you to see this stuff because it is so doggone skinny. And you want to have the appropriate tools. This is a good cutter, and I'll use this for cutting the mono a little bit later. These cutters work fine for that. That's the appropriate application. Don't use these for cutting braid. Use yourself either a pair of scissors that are dedicated to that purpose, or better yet, a cutter that's made specifically for braid, and only use it for braid because it'll slice that line instead of compressing it. It makes your job easier when it comes time to start working on the line. Now, with working with a line, I'll give it a try here. First thing we want to do, I think probably is zoom the camera in a little bit so we can, hopefully you can see what I'm trying to do. And I'll start off with, this is I'll use the 30-pound line, and this is, if I can grab it, the tool we'll put to use first is the 30 to 40 pound Daho hollow needle. Okay, and what I try and do, let's see if we can zoom this in even just a little bit more, because this is, like I said, this is some pretty skinny stuff. Okay, let's see if that's going to work for us. May have to move the camera over a little bit. There we go. Okay, first, tease the line. Let's see here if I can get her at a good spot to work with. Tease a little bit. Tease the end. At least that's what I do. And that kind of will help you fluff it up a little bit so you can open her up. And then once you do, you can see how easily that actually went in there. That's pretty surprising stuff. And then start bringing her up. And I'll give a little twist to my needle that way. Not to get too aggressive with that. And again, if I'd used a smaller needle, it would have been even easier. But this is pretty doggone easy, you have to admit. sometimes at the very end of the spool, or the very beginning rather, you may want to go ahead and clip a little bit, just because the line's probably been flattened down a little bit on the spool. Okay, so basically I'm going to continue this process until I reach pretty close to the end of this needle, and then we'll insert the mono line. I'll use a high vis because it's a little easier to see into the needle, and we'll go on up through the braid, and I'll show you a way to terminate this. Actually, I'll show you several ways to terminate this, and we'll go from there. Give me just a moment, I'll get the mono prepared. Okay, now I've trimmed my mono, which maybe if I can get my hands to work properly, you'll see here is a high vis using some Iser. And this is a 20-pound test line. Iser is not known for being skinny, so what I'll have to do with the needle here is go ahead and use a little emery board or file, and just to trim that, make it smooth, because again, using a cutter to clip the line, that compresses it, okay, and kind of squeezes it, so you've got a little wide spot. So once having done that, I'll be able to insert this mono if I did this enough, and if I can see it properly, but I'm wearing my glasses like I should. Again, if you've got the eyes of a hummingbird, maybe this won't be an issue for you, but for me, it certainly is. I think for most adults over 40, unless you've really been blessed with some great eyesight. Okay, so there is my leader going into the needle. I'll continue this process of bringing the braid on up the needle. Kind of give it sometimes a little gentle twist as I go. It works well. And you can see this really is going pretty darn well. Impressive stuff, I have to say. I am partial, but there's no line that opens up like this stuff, and there's no line that's ever been produced in this sort of line test range. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. Now it is possible that you poke through the sides. A 16 strand line is much nicer in that respect than would be a 12 strand or 8 strand or something else. And if you do, just quickly take it back out the other way. Go back up a little bit and continue that process. Yeah, with 16 strands it doesn't happen often, but we're working with some pretty skinny stuff. And that's one thing that's nice about Lanny Daho's needles. He's learned, and so they're more rounded at the tip. They're not at a sharp file point, which, we're not looking for a fishing hook or something that's going to penetrate an animal's jaw. We're looking for a needle that's going to go into the braid, open it up, and allow the rest of the needle to go through and do its job. At the point of the needle, my line. Now I'm going to continue this for about, let's say 3 feet. This process, once you start working with it, you're going to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes setting up your line and your leader, but once it's done, it's done. It is more time consuming than would be a knot, but understand that for that time there's a return on your investment, because this is the only way to get 100% strength of connection. Every knot is going to break at a lighter test, every knot. Even when we do a big Bimini to Albright, those knots will have an issue. They can't help it. It's just the way they are. So maybe they'll test at 90% instead of 100%. Maybe they'll, come in the 80s. The guys that are doing, doubled up unis, I've done testing on that stuff. It can work for the light test because you're not giving it too heavy of a drag, level and too much stress. But the reality is, it won't test that well when push comes to shove. It's going to have a little bit of an issue. Okay, so I'll keep this process going on the rigging. I'll put her on pause as I go up. I'm going to take this about 3 feet with the leader. And that's normally what I would do on a lighter test, like 20-pound line, is take it up about 3 feet in terms of length. And then what we'll do is we'll take our needle through the braid. Now is the time when we do want to go through that wall. Bring the needle on up. see here. I'll go back to where the leader enters that needle here just to kind of hold it. And I'll bring the needle out. Okay. Now, let's see. You can see the line sticking through it. Now we'll go ahead and bring that braid back over that part of the line. Smooth the line on down. I think we can probably make this a little bit wider now. And now we'll go on to that point where the two lines join. Now we can't just leave it at this, okay? We need to do something that's going to secure this point of transition to your leader. So we want to do something to tighten this part here so that when you pull on the line, the braid will do its job, which is your basic, Chinese finger trap, and hold that braid where it belongs. And there are several different methods of doing this. One, there are several knots that guys have used over the years. There's your basic, worm knot, which is kind of a nasty, gnarly, connection. This is heavier braid, but you can see, and heavier leader. But it's, doggone it, it's not a very nice knot to have to work with. It just isn't. The stuff is pointy. It's going to poke your finger. It doesn't feel good. But that's something that some people have used. It's not something that I like. You can go through the time and trouble of doing a served connection, and a properly tied serve is a great way to go. And I'll say a served connection like that, makes for a nice smooth transition, as you can see. And it's a great way to go on your heavy test stuff. If you're fishing, for cow-sized tuna. The Sato connection is another good one. That will test very well. There are videos online about the use of it. It uses a small crimp, and he has crimps that'll go down into that, let's say 30, 40 pound range and work adequately. But there's not a whole lot of stuff you're going to see on the market to handle the real light stuff. And there are a few ways of dealing with that. You can be as simple as doing an overhand knot right here. Make an overhand knot, cinch her down, and that's going to work, believe it or not. The downside is that you do have, with an overhand knot in your line, you'll increase the breakage, that way under force, where the line can cut into itself. But that's been something that's been employed with some big fish for a lot of years. That can work. The Sato connection, as I mentioned, is really made for heavier line. So you can serve this. That doesn't take a whole lot of time. You can do a series of overhand knots on this area and then apply an appropriate glue, which this is, a very, very super glue. It's not your standard super glue. It's a different type of material that has a little more elasticity, deals better in water, and allows for some flexibility, which is what you're going to need. The regular brittle glues that you buy off the shelf don't allow that. They don't have those same properties. Okay, now, the best way of securing this point that I've found, and it's nothing that I invented, it goes back to the old fly guys, is using what's called a nail knot. It's a simple nail knot or a nub knot. And a nub knot takes this one step further, and I'll discuss that a little bit. But your basic nail knot is perfect for this, and it's simple and it's fast to tie. To do that, we need a little bit of line, and so I'll swipe some line that's going to be something that's visible to do this. But with the use of a little bit of skinny line, preferably with a little dab of that glue at this point, you have a done deal on your connection. But I'll show you how to do that nub knot. Okay, with a nub knot, there are little tools that are available, or you can make them yourself. These are 3 tools that the fly guys will remember. They're made for tying knots. Basically, you can make your own. A lot of guys will use a nail to make a nail knot, or a straw. These little tools work very, very well, and they're cheap. For the larger tests, because these are really made for the fly guys and pretty skinny diameters, what I wound up doing is just making one out of an old rod. All I need is a little hollow groove section to work with the stuff. But I'll use one of the commercial. Okay, I'll use a commercial tool for this job. It's a standard, fly fishing. This is an Orvis piece, but it's a pretty standard fly fishing tool. And what you do is you'll have your main line at that transition point secured in this system. There are a few ways of doing that, but one is simply to get it sized up and stuck in there, okay? And then you'll hold on to the thread you're using for the serve or for the knot into the device. Right there is a little pad where you can hold it. Or again, on my rod blank tool, I do the same thing by holding the line right here. You go from the tip here. You'll have your main line already stuck in this section. And then you're just going to wrap around up 5 times. You'll go through down below so the line is over itself. And then you'll give it a quick tug and jerk to secure it to the point where you want it on that line. So let's go ahead and do it. Okay, that's approximately where I want it to be. I'm securing both those lines on this little rest piece here. I'll begin my little wrap. Maybe I'll back out a little bit so the focusing is a little easier on this thing. There are my 5 wraps around the tool. I'll bring my line back through and come out. Okay, so I've got 5 wraps. I've got both lines. I've got my line going underneath those coils that I made, and now I'll tighten things down a little bit. I've got about, a 1/4 of an inch, maybe a 1/3 of an inch here at the end. Let's see, so you can see the contrast where the braid is and where the leader is. And then I'm going to give it just a quick jerk. Boop, 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 boop. Now that's not as fast as some people would do, but it's fast enough for me. And then I'll take both ends of my tag, give it a good pull, which I did. And that is, I'm an amateur at this stuff. The fly guys, some other fishermen are much better at knots. But if a numbnut such as myself can do this, it's pretty doggone easy. Okay, then just go ahead and trim off the ends of your nub. Or your nail knot, whichever terminology you like to use. I'm going to trim it right there. And that is my secure point. Now, to get a little bit anal with this, which I think is a good thing, I would give it just a little bit of dab, just a dab of the glue onto that knot and then right in front of it on the braid. Okay, that's it. Now you could probably get away with just using the glue. As I said, you could probably get away with doing a nail knot, or a regular overhand knot here, or a series of maybe 3 overhand knots, and that would be fine using your serving line. You could do a knot that's incorporating both the leader and the braid at this point. Just do an overhead knot there. The downside is with that, you may cut into the line itself over time, and that's not a plus. That's not a plus. That's a bad thing. Then the little nail knot is a doggone simple, quick way to make this connection, and to trick it out. Now, if I'm fishing 100-pound line, 80-pound line or greater, I'm not going to use one of these little knots. I'll use probably 3. And I wish I remembered the fellow's name because I fished with him once, and he was one of the innovators in this little, what's become known as the nub knot on the West Coast. And what he would do is put a nail knot onto the mono, okay? And then that would go inside of the braid, going up, let's say, about an inch. And then he would do a series of 3 of these nail knots. and one of them would be coming in, close contact to that little nail knot that he put on the leader itself. Okay, so that would kind of be another little stopper for it. And he's, the guys that have used it have taken some big cows, and it's an alternative to the Sato system. The Sato system is quicker and faster. A served connection is another great way to go. I've seen those work beautifully, and I've seen them kind of undone when guys haven't done them properly. And this is on cow-sized tuna. But, think about it. When we're working with 20-pound mono, 20-pound, 30-pound on the braid, we're fishing at a drag level that's going to be 10 pounds and less, a lot less, maybe 5 pounds worth of drag. That the forces employed there are not huge. And I got to tell you, this line is going to lock itself down so that you can't pull it apart. A fish will not be able to pull it apart. But that's all you need to do, basically, is that little nail knot. And then, this thing, I'm pulling like the dickens on it, and I'm getting a little stretch on the mono, but it's not going to come undone, because the more I pull, the more this braid is locking down on that leader. It ain't going anywhere. As long as we have this point secured here, it's a done deal. You've got a connection that's essentially 100% strong. Okay, so that is a nub knot, and that's an introduction to our 20 and 30 pound 16 strand hollow core braid, which is the thinnest, the skinniest, the best in the fishing tackle industry. So if you're an inshore fisherman, if you're a freshwater fisherman, even for the guys doing some fly fishing, you finally have a braid that's skinny in diameter, that's realistic in terms of tests that you would use. You don't have to go up to 60-pound stuff to get this type of connection done. You can work with 20 and 30-pound Toro Tamer Super Braid.